Technology is slowly suffocating the human race, holding a pillow over its face so gently that we don't even notice anything is wrong until it's way too late to change course. The world ends not with an explosion, but a small puff of air. This is OK Computer by Radiohead, and it's a work of art. Welcome to 4/8 Music, where excellent and praiseworthy music always wins. I take Philippians 4/8 seriously, so on album artworks, I'm examining albums that achieve great levels of artistry, beauty, mastery of craft, and clarity of purpose. Now keep in mind that this is all my own personal opinion and no one else's. Feel free to disagree with me, and if you do, you're not wrong. Radiohead had generally humble beginnings, not very unlike other 90s alt-rock bands the Western world over. Their first album, Popolo Honey, fit in so well among other early 90s grunge and alternative offerings that it would have been near invisible were it not for Creep, which exploded in 1993 due to its naked vulnerability and universal relatability. 2 years later came The Bends, which improved on their debut in every way imaginable, elevating them to dizzying heights of popularity, and they hated it. I don't think I've ever seen another band that continuously stays in the spotlight for such a long time while simultaneously exhibiting such discomfort at being there. The 90s was a time of the new generation of adults coming to grips with their own mediocrity and realizing that their parents had lied to them about being able to do literally anything they wanted to do. It was a time of angst, ennui, disillusionment, and fatalism, and it was also a time of breakneck speed and advances in technology. The emergence of the internet was one of the most dramatic, ranking up there with the assembly line and the gas-powered automobile for how it completely changed human behavior. Even though at the time some people thought the internet was just that thing that tells you the weather, it very quickly became an essential. It didn't take long for the world to go global, and every ounce of information to be at our fingertips, about anything and everything. With it came ironically a diminishing of our connection with the real world, and a deadening of our senses and sensitivities. Also, grunge was dead. So the rock world had to figure out what it was going to look like post-flannel shirts. Enter OK Computer, Radiohead's third album. At the time of its release, critics were tripping over themselves to say that not only was it a gigantic breakthrough capturing the spirit of the time, but that it would permanently change the landscape of rock and roll. Not since Sgt. Pepper had a record been so universally agreed upon to be a game changer. OK Computer was the sound of a world being mutated, not into some grotesque Cronenbergian creature of terror, rather into something more mechanized, more dead-eyed, and sociopathic. The whole album has a sense of impending doom, an existential dread that's made only more disquieting by how vague it is. We should be more connected to each other than we've ever been, and yet we feel more distant, not less. We feel more isolated from other people and society in general, and we've even invented systems and industries to combat that very thing. We know more, but we feel less. OK Computer is the product of Radiohead retreating to a mansion in the English countryside, and their record company giving them a whole bunch of money and saying, go nuts. But it's safe to say that Capitol wasn't expecting such a cutting, fatalistic, or musically strange record as OK Computer. They probably just wanted The Bends Part 2. The band doesn't just explore more weighty and mature lyrical themes, but a darker and more theme-specific sound, complicated song structures, and new and innovative ways to use their instruments. Both Johnny Greenwood and Ed O'Brien are forcefully pushing the boundaries of what a guitar can do and sound like. And Johnny could no longer be considered just a guitarist, but rather as a musical and technological Svengali.
Svengali.
What did I say?
Svengali.
Svengali? I did not say Svengali.
George.
Svengali. Watching him on stage, I don't even know what he's doing half the time, and sometimes it looks like he's not even playing music at all. But he's certainly contributing an essential piece to the band's overall sound. Airbag is a crystallization of OK Computer's themes, musical style, and place in its moment in history. It's written by Tom York about technology and how it simultaneously sustains and destroys life. Radiohead's always walked a treacherous line between biting sarcasm and despair-driven sincerity, and that's on full display in Airbag. On the surface, the lyrics are about Tom's brush with death in a car crash, and how an airbag saved his life. The lyrics use that to examine humanity's relationship to technology. One of the first glimpses we got of this new Radiohead offering was when they played this song on British television, and it heralds a new understanding of a band that, up until this point, didn't have a lot to distinguish themselves from the teeming throng of garage-turned-arena rock bands of the 90s. OK Computer changed all that. Paranoid Android is what changed that for me. The first time I stood at attention and said, who are these guys? It's a doozy, a 6-minute, 3-part suite without a chorus in multiple time signatures. It floats effortlessly from a groovy and sinister acoustic number to a punk freakout of barely contained chaos to an ethereal and spacey slow jam, and then back to the punk freakout for an abrupt ending. The first time I heard it was when I was 16 years old, and it was so weird. That's in no small part due to its music video, which is made by Magnus Carlsen, creator of the cartoon Robin. The video features Robin and his friend Benjamin getting into all sorts of shenanigans, which highlight the deadened, barely feeling state of society. It was very mind-warping for my 16-year-old self, and it was one of those moments that you have as a kid that's at once traumatic, confusing, and enlightening. I felt like my worldview was being violated, yet I was grateful for that violation. It's the first single from OK Computer, and it's one of the most uncommercial songs in Radiohead's catalog. It also happens to be one of their best. Subterranean Homesick Alien personifies space and its vast expanse, and the lyrics talk about, you guessed it, alienation. I think the thesis is, in a world filled with such apathy and resistance to anything out of the ordinary, it might be preferable to be alienated. The protagonist gets abducted by aliens, and likes it. The aliens in the song are more like tourists visiting a zoo on vacation, and the protagonist longs for an escape from the planet, showing the band's David Bowie influence. Pink Floyd shows up here too, as the shooting star guitar effect as well as other spacey soundscapes the band employs are a direct homage to Floyd and their second album, A Saucer Full of Secrets. It's a pretty understated song, with only the treble-heavy lead guitar piercing the mix during the second verse, setting you on edge. Also, I'm not really sure if the title is a tribute to or a crack on Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues. I'm kind of hoping for the latter. Things get really dark in a hurry with exit music for a film, like Black Hole Dark. Radiohead prove here that they know how and when to strip back their sound, taking on a minimalist, almost reverent tone at the beginning of this song. It's a whisper quiet, and the intimacy with which Tom York sings and delicately strums his guitar makes you, the listener, shrink down and become quiet too. Intimacy is the right word, because Tom is working within the motif of Romeo and Juliet in the lyrics, talking from one lover to another, but not words of love. Instead, they're words of desperation, longing to escape, and a desire to burn the establishment down. It's used in the ending credits of Romeo plus Juliet by Baz Luhrmann, a film seemingly at odds with the song's barely there and mysterious tone. Nothing about Romeo plus Juliet is barely there. Instead, it's a loud, bombastic, colorful, and chaotic movie, and that gives the beautiful despair and tragedy of the song that much more punch. Tom York's voice is especially suited to exit music's spirit. There are a multitude of other singers on YouTube doing covers of this song, and many other Radiohead songs, and while some of them are quite good, they all seem a little too perfect. By standard definitions of people who can really sing, Tom York is not a good singer. But the thing is, every single Radiohead song I've ever heard can be sung no better than by Tom York. He puts his stamp on everything and marks it as his. That's the sign of a great singer. As to the lyrics, they're perfect for the movie because both carry the same interpretation of the play Romeo and Juliet, which is one of a bunch of young, stupid characters who don't consider themselves young or stupid. The central couple, which are the two characters that exit music is concerned with, especially exemplify the framing of something like death as an act of rebellion against her parents instead of, the end of life. But in the hands of Radiohead and Tom York, that attitude sounds disturbingly convincing. It's good that after the depressing darkness and helplessness of exit music, Letdown sounds like an idyllic uplift. So it's ironic that it's actually a close examination of depression. The ringing guitars play a polyrhythm to the drum beat, and the whole thing has a spacey, confusing haze to it that really only coalesces to you, the listener, when you surrender to the music and float along where it takes you. Again, this is ironic, since so much of Radiohead's music rewards the opposite, very close and active listening, as opposed to a passive, go-with-the-flow attitude. Karma Police serves as the second single, and is one of the most iconic songs of Radiohead's entire career. It's the first song a lot of people think of when they hear their name, and rightly so. It has some of Radiohead's most memorable lines, a catchy as hell piano melody, and a memorable music video that it was everywhere in 1997. It communicates very effectively some of the strongest elements of OK Computer. It's poppy, gentle and appealing, while also having an undercurrent that ranges from chilling to downright terrifying. The ending, a distorted and computerized guitar riff that slows and descends like a cyborg running out of batteries, will make you feel as if you're losing your mind. The halfway point of the album comes in the form of the most damning indictment of our society to come around in a while. It's called Fitter Happier. It's a tuneless interlude of psychotic and freakish noises, played behind a run-through of slogans and pithy phrases from some sort of imagined dystopian society, like a manifesto of apathy and mediocrity that feels nothing and says nothing. York found it so depressing after he wrote it that he was glad to pass it off to Fred, a synthesized voice produced by the Macintosh text-to-speech app. But Fred's dry recital of the words only emphasized the cold, bloodless attitude the song represents. It's one of the album's most disturbing moments. It's followed up by Electioneering, a balls-to-the-wall rocker and the song most in line with the Radiohead of the past. Its killer guitar riff is aggressively caustic, and the guitar tone Johnny achieves here is so wild and chaotic that it's amazing it can even be contained at all. It's one of Radiohead's most exciting tracks, evoking the feeling of breaking things. The lyrics take aim at politicians. Tony Blair and the New Labour movement are probably the most likely targets, but I think Electioneering is saying something about the nature of politics itself, regardless of country. It seems the problems it talks about occur in America just as much as in Britain. The song also uses that political dynamic to say something about falseness and manipulation, which plays into OK Computer's theme of the deadening of feeling. Climbing Up the Walls wins the award for the most terrifying, disturbing, and psychologically tortured song not just on OK Computer, but in Radiohead's entire catalog. It's about a monster that lives inside all of us, the capacity that we all have for horrible, unspeakable acts, and the depth of evil that we're all capable of.
Catchy little number, isn't it?
Now, I can't begin to understand what they're doing technically, but the music evokes dank and dark basements with no lights and fungus growing in the corners. The song makes me very uncomfortable, but there's something alluring to it too. It also speaks to the keep calm and carry on ethos of British people, that way of living that says sitting still in quiet dignity is far preferable to letting the potentially ugly truth be visible. There's tension there that Radiohead has no problem exploring. Brits understand something about human nature that I think a lot of Americans miss. There's a lot more going on beneath the surface than it looks like. After that forced examination of the darkest parts of ourselves, we get a lullaby. But no surprises is a lullaby that a cyborg would sing to another cyborg. It's mechanistic and with all the softness of a steel exam table, but it's also kind of comforting. The lyrics are about slow death, likening the 9-to-5 workaday life that the vast majority of people live to carbon monoxide poisoning. The soft caress of the sleepy, pretty music juxtapose the hopeless and despairing lyrics quite subtly. It's far from the first place it happens on this album, but it's probably the best. True to form, the third music video from OK Computer is yet again memorable and visually striking, and is perhaps the most dramatic. Yes, that's really Tom York in a helmet, and yes, it's really filling up with water. Yes, he almost drowned. They did 3 takes, and the last one pushed Tom beyond the limits of his ability to face death. And of course, that's the one that's in the video. Lucky was the first track ever recorded for OK Computer, and it was originally done in 1995 for the Help album, a benefit compilation for the Bosnia and Herzegovina War. Tom York and producer Nigel Godrich have said that Lucky was the starting point for OK Computer, and the whole trajectory of the album came out of that. That sounds right, since the mood and general tone of Lucky do match those of the album, and even the lyrics talk about survival and taking control of your life, and share a little thematic thrust with Airbag at the beginning of the album, the common theme being anxiety about travel. But where Airbag took a cynical view of the technology that saves the protagonist's life, Lucky sounds almost optimistic. It's really only the impending doom the music suggests that dampens the things are looking up tone of the lyrics. But since it's placed near the end of the album and we've had 10 previous tracks of doom and gloom, Lucky sounds as though the protagonist is really only kidding himself. Capping the album, we have its weakest moment, The Tourist. But it's supposed to be weak, and I believe in letting art do what it intends to do, or at least letting it try. The Tourist is meant to remind the audience that not all songs need to have something happening every single second. It's meant to remind us about space and how to take our time. The lyrics reflect that with their refrain of slow down, and it even takes an extra beat in one measure at the end of every verse. With the already slow pace of The Tourist, that extra beat feels pretty long. While I don't enjoy the song itself, I do find value in what it represents. The 90s is probably the most important decade for the development of rock music, even more so than the 70s. So it's no small thing to say OK Computer did more to advance rock music than almost any other album. This massive game changer set the stage for what happened to the genre in the 2000s, but it also projected a portent for the future of not just rock music, but modern society. And it wasn't important that anybody wanted to hear. Radiohead continued to push forward, defy conventions, and constantly keep their eyes forward, bored with and disdainful of the here and now. And their influence doesn't stop at OK Computer. In fact, they were just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to me obsess about something I love, and I hope you gained something from it too. This is YouTube, so by now you know how this works. If you liked this video, hit the like button, and if you want to see more videos like it, hit the subscribe button. And if you love OK Computer too, or have anything to say that's Radiohead related, or anything at all, leave a comment below. If you do, say nice things, say true things, and always be kind. God bless, and rock on.